Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. This podcast is hosted by Asher Agency, a full-service partner to clients nationwide. Asher's services include media planning, creative, digital and social, website development, public relations, printing and fulfillment, and more. Anything you need to connect with your prospects and tell your story. To learn more, visit asheragency.com or contact us at hello@asheragency.com.
My guest is Ada Bair. Ada, how are you today?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. You come very highly recommended from Mike Fulton, who I understand you've worked with in the past.
Yes, for probably 30 plus years, I think.
All right. Well, that's great. Well, Ada, we want to hear in just a few minutes about the work you're doing today. But as we typically do with our guests, I want to start a little further back and talk about your career path. And where I'd like you to begin is tell me a little bit about when you started thinking about career choices. What was your intended path? And then where did you go from there?
Well, I will tell you really honestly that my career path has been squiggly, I guess is a way to describe it. And literally it started in the second grade when I said I'm going to be a nurse.
Ah, okay. Wow.
Done. And in the sixth grade.
What was it about nursing that caught your attention? Was it in the family? Was it a mentor? That's a pretty early age to make that decision.
Yeah, it is. Well, growing up on a farm, I guess I was just fascinated with, the animals and the things that we took care of. And I do have an aunt that's a nurse. And so I think just in general, that caregiving was kind of,
sure,
in my blood. And the other maybe a little snippet that's interesting in the sixth grade, my very best friend, the first time I met her in school, huge bandage on her face, and she was born without a jaw and an ear.
Mm.
And so she had had plastic surgery after surgery after surgery. She too wanted to be a nurse. And I heard all about this amazing hospital where she got her care. And we made a pact in sixth grade that that's where we would go to school.
Oh, wow.
And we did.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's amazing.
So,
wow.
And so I really thought that I would spend my career at the bedside because
Sure.
I wanted to be a great nurse and thought that my goal after nursing was to work on the ship Hope because I wanted to travel. Mm-hmm. And they would only accept nurses who had 3 years experience. So I had to go get experience. So I went to New Zealand and worked. So a lot of years ultimately in nursing, a lot in community hospitals. I worked every shift, every department that you could work, worked in physician offices, had the opportunity to actually manage practices, and found then myself taking a bit of a deviation when there was a very creative CEO who was looking for someone with clinical background who could also do sales and marketing. And we had a brand new rehab unit, and it was covering a 10-county area, calling on physicians and saying, when you have somebody and they've had a stroke and they're in the hospital post-stroke, refer them to us and into our rehab unit. So that was my first, big toe in the water of walking away from the bedside.
Yeah. So what was that transition like for you? Because, that one of the things that's interesting about your story, while many of our guests have careers that are squiggly lines, to use your term, I don't think I've had a guest that knew that early in life where they were headed. So you have almost this destiny of being a nurse, and then you make a change. How did that feel, and how did that go for you?
Yeah. It was an opportunity. I really felt like I was taking great care of patients. because I was connecting providers with information and knowledge that would help patients get to a better place. And even though I wasn't doing that hands-on, it started translating to me like, oh, in another role, maybe I can even have a more profound impact on the care rather than that ICU patient that I was taking care of, one at a time.
Yeah.
And so that was good in terms of feeling like we were providing a community need and I was connecting people with needed resources.
Okay.
So that also led into an opportunity where I was given the opportunity to start helping with strategic planning and recruiting physicians. And all of a sudden, I found myself learning how to do contracting and physician recruitment, which led me in my next career change when I made a physical move where I really was doing medical staff development. So it was practice management using those previous skills that I'd had from managing a couple physician practices as a nurse to helping a broader base with, again, practice management and that using some of my marketing and kind of sales outreach at the time. And it was working in that organization in Northern Virginia that I met a colleague who ultimately connected me with Mike Fulton. So,
Okay.
So back in the day, that little deviation of my career actually is how I got connected.
Okay.
So I did that for a number of years, and when I relocated again, found myself in the position to run a very large urgent care facility, and then once again found myself responsible for the marketing department, ultimately operations, and yet like one more transition of my career path, I guess, that was a really wonderful experience for a number of years. And it also gave me, in that opportunity, operational experience with construction and project management and those kind of things. Until, I guess when I landed where I am today, and I shouldn't even tell you this, but now it sounds like, you're going, oh my gosh, she's ancient, because I moved into my current role as a hospital CEO 21 years ago.
Okay. Well, I chalk it up to a lot of good experience early in your career. Let's go with that. So, if you don't mind my asking, where is home for you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Northeastern Ohio.
Northeastern Ohio. Okay, so you're not near home, but you're closer to home than you were when you were in New Zealand. So for those who may not know much about Memorial Hospital, that you're located in Western Illinois and Eastern Iowa, in that part of the world. Is that correct?
Yes. I tell people, if you look at the map of Illinois, there's that pregnant bump. And if I sneezed, I would fall in the Mississippi. So
Okay.
So we're really close to the river.
Okay, all right. And you serve the residents of Hancock County, do I have that right? Primarily as your patients? Okay, so tell us a little bit about Memorial Hospital. You've been there for 20 years. What does Memorial Hospital look like today? And if it's different than it was when you started 20 years ago, what's changed?
When I started, critical access hospital, very traditional, built back in the day, was right after the war, hence our name, because there was no hospital in this neck of the woods. And it had a nursing home that was attached to it on a campus that was a few blocks from downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to today, We have a brand new hospital campus that sits on about 75 acres on the 4-lane highway that goes through the edge of Carthage. A new medical office building. We actually demoed the original campus, and that campus has been repurposed, and it's our Hancock Village, and we have 42 supportive living apartments. We have 2 memory care houses that were the first of their kind, built in Illinois, that accommodate 10 residents each in studio apartments specially designed for folks with cognitive impairment. And we recently, about 18 months ago, opened a child care and a child and education center because we didn't have enough child care in this area for our employees, and have gone from 2 clinics to 8 clinic locations, and working with my colleague, Mr. Fulton, have actually 2 other we actually have 2 other major projects in the works for the county. So we do not look at all like the healthcare services that were being delivered 20 years ago.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and changing right along with healthcare. So, am I correct? You're an independent entity at a time when there's a lot of consolidation in healthcare. How are you managing that as CEO? What are the advantages that brings you? What are some of the challenges that come with it?
One of the key advantages for being independent, and part of that really is, I describe healthcare as a 3-legged stool. It takes your governance, it takes your board, it takes your medical staff, and it takes administration. And so you've got to be in sync. And I happen to have a wonderful medical staff and an incredibly supportive governance leadership with the board and wonderful volunteerism. So that is key. The other thing is just understanding that while we are independent, we collaborate tremendously with other organizations and other entities, sharing resources, sharing staff, and that is huge. One of the other things in Illinois, we have an amazing Illinois Critical Access Hospital network, and that network brings so many resources that are available to us. But then what I also think it helps us as a small organization, we are so nimble. And I think that is, again, what really helps us to stay independent, because we don't get bogged down with layers and layers of, how do we do this and approval processes and that kind of thing. We can move pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, that's great. And nimble is not a word you hear associated with healthcare very often, so that's a real advantage.
No.
So, how, Ada, are you navigating some of the challenges like the nursing shortage? That's a national issue. I worked in healthcare for 5 years, so I know this much about healthcare, so enough to be dangerous. But certainly we have some healthcare clients, and in talking with them, that's one of the primary challenges they're faced with. How is that affecting you, and what are you doing in response?
Mm-hmm. It's obviously a national concern. We are not producing enough nurses, or nurses who are wanting particularly to work in an inpatient and stay at the bedside. So that is really hard. And I think one of the things that is very challenging, there's some of the big guys around us who have deeper pockets, and the amount of signing bonuses and incentives and wages that are being, touted really do not make it at all financially feasible for a small organization. So one of the things that we've worked really hard on is our culture. Mm-hmm. And I am very, very proud that actually starting back in COVID, we obtained our 5-star rating with CMS. We've maintained our 5-star rating last year, the National Rural Health Association, we were nominated and received the top award that they hand out as the Outstanding Rural Health Organization. And so what we really try and be mindful of is the workload of our team, and really working hard on reward and recognition and being a place where they value how they get to work, even though we can't pay them as much as, maybe our next door neighbors. But it's still a struggle. I mean, I'm being honest, we still have some travelers with us that are amazing team members. We'd love to figure out how to keep them full time.
Yeah.
But the price tag is steep.
Sure. Well, and we do a lot of work with higher ed clients, and there's a lot of innovation in the higher ed space, making it easier and more attractive for people to enter nursing careers and get a credential quickly, while also making sure they get the education they need along the way. Yeah. Anything like that in the works in your area? Partnerships with higher ed?
Yes, we do have partnerships, and one of the other things that I'm also very excited about that we are doing is, we do scholarships, so we, help, people get through school. But one of the other things that we're doing with our foundation is we have a campaign underway that is called Grow Our Own. And one of the things that I looked around and was concerned is seeing perhaps that there's a nurse aide who would make a great nurse, but they're a single mom.
Yep.
How do they go back to school? Even if I pay their tuition, how do they go part-time and then buy groceries and keep the lights on?
Yep.
And so the money that we've been raising through the foundation is allowing us to keep everybody whole. Mm-hmm. So if you have to cut back in order to complete your education, you still get your paycheck. Because we get the subsidy through the generosity of our community and funding that campaign. So we're doing that as one more way to, get those individuals in our pipeline a little creatively.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a great program, and congratulations, by the way, on the recent accolades. That helps tell the story too. Speaking of telling the story, this is, after all, the Asher Marketing Podcast. I want to hear a little bit about how you as an organization tell your story. When I started working in healthcare, and this goes back 25 years, more than 25 years ago, marketing was almost an afterthought for many healthcare institutions. It was like, patients, if they need to find us, they know where the ER is. That's going to lead to referral business. If moms have babies, they know where the maternity ward is. That they'll find us. And it was almost, I think my original title was something to do with community relations, because it was more about PR events. And one of the things that's changed dramatically is now there's a lot of competition and a lot more need for hospitals to individually tell their story. How is that affecting Memorial Hospital, and what are you doing to get the word out about why you're different and maybe better than some of the other options?
No, really a great question, and you're right. I was trained early on in my career when I worked for a CEO who came out of business and industry and manufacturing into healthcare, and was told early on, penny wise, pound foolish. If you're tight on finances and the first thing you do is cut marketing, do not do that. So, so I learned that lesson early on. And so in terms of what we do today, again, it is still very different, than 20 years ago. Because it isn't just about, believe it or not, it's not about the yellow pages. It's not about the ad in the local newspaper. It's not about, the press release, because our circulation isn't, immense. Yeah. But the creativity that's coming out of the marketing team in terms of, yes, everything on social media. Yes, we do Facebook. Yes, we do TikTok. Yes, we do Instagram. Yes, we do we do those short little video snippets, knowing that if somebody doesn't want to look at anything more than, like 5 seconds today,
Yeah.
And yet we also serve, as most rural communities, also an aging population. So we found ourselves hanging on to some of those traditional things that we've always done, and some radio and TV and all of that, but really having to embed it in all of the social media platforms. And also because we have, over the last year, dipped our big toe into some of our businesses retail today. And we do have some cash-based services. And so we are having to be very creative in terms of how do we sell the products that are on our shelves, and some of the services that we do where people are spending discretionary funds. So
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've evolved really well with the times, and we are in this strange place where the new media, digital media, obviously is very relevant, and it's where things are headed. But we can't let go of some of the things we've always done, because many of the people we serve, that's how we're going to find them. So I don't know if within my lifetime that's going to change. And it's like you have to be conversant in all the different media in order to get your message out today. What are some of the Ada? What are some of the things that you're focused on in the near term? Your top priorities. Sounds like you've got, you have a hospital that was, reconstructed within, sounds like about 10, 15 years ago. You've got some major new initiatives that are behind you, but what's ahead? Some of the things you're focused on?
We actually did a very deep dive with strategic planning last year with an external firm, and really spent some time going, what does that look like? Yeah. And we evolved 5 key strategic priorities that are focused. But one of the things that, again, is very different in our strategic planning today than, again, it was historically, is those 5 strategic priorities have some basic tactics and metrics under them. There is a champion for each one of those priorities, not me. Somebody else is driving each of those 5 trains, with every department having their business plans roll up into that. But we've also been trained that it's agile planning. So I do not have a 3-year strategic plan or a 5-year strategic plan like perhaps we did historically. I have 5 big priorities.
Yeah.
And within those, we're 6 months into how are we doing this year, and we're already looking to change the metrics and tactics for next year. But the big bucket is obviously our number one is team. Nothing happens if I don't have the right team on board with focused, in the right direction. And then our patient experience. We've moved from a small single community hospital to really we're a regional provider.
Yeah.
And so that has changed dramatically. And then of course quality, quality of care. We want to be known for the fact that you can come here and feel confident that you'll have surgery and not come out with an infection, right?
Yeah.
And those kinds of things. So it gets back to nimble.
Yeah. Well, and there's 2 things in there that I'm really impressed by. Number one is the agility. I always say that 5-year plans don't usually last for more than about 5 minutes, because the reality at which, the pace at which things move. And I really like the fact that you mentioned delegation. You alluded to the fact that you're not in charge of everything. You can't be. You have to manage the people who you have and trust them to focus on the priorities. Give them guidance, make sure that you're consistently telling them what's important, and then hire great people and stay out of their way unless they need you. So that's great. That's great. Well, I want to pivot, Ada, to a couple quick hit questions, things that maybe will summarize some of the great points you've made. Sounds like you've had an amazing career and you've done a lot of great things. What would you say is your best career advice if you were talking to someone either just getting started out in a healthcare career or any career for that matter, and they asked you what it takes to have a successful, fulfilling career? What do you think is the key?
For me, it has been open to, I tell folks, lifelong learning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the tender age of 50, as a single mom, I went back and got my master's in healthcare administration. So don't ever think you know it all.
Yeah.
You know, be open. And I've been blessed with incredible mentors and coaches along the way. So don't stop listening to the perspective of others.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because just as our organization has to be nimble in order to flex, and sometimes that means I started a program and 5 years later you may have to pull the plug on it.
Yeah.
You know, don't get too much ownership.
Yeah.
But you have to be flexible yourself as a leader in the organization, to flex perhaps a little bit of your leadership style and the direction you're going to go. And just don't ever get so cocky that you're not willing to listen to your nurse aide, your custodian, or somebody else who may have great perspective.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and in my experience, that also extends to maybe more junior colleagues, people who are just getting started in their career. I find that the older I get, the more I'm impressed by how knowledgeable people are who just coming into the workforce with what they know. The other thing, I was explaining this to one of my younger coworkers recently. I told them, and their eyes got really big when I said this, but it was true. When I started my career, my first real job, if you will, after college, I didn't have an email address and the company had no website because those things didn't exist. And now being, email or websites are about 99% of my work. So I definitely hear you there that you have to individually be agile, be willing to learn. And the minute you think you know it all is time to remind yourself that you don't know much. That's great. The second quick hit question I want to ask you about is about your organization and the work you do. Is there a myth or a misconception about whether it's about independent hospitals, whether it's about your facility, whether it's about being a CEO, whether it's about healthcare, a myth or a misconception you want to clear up, or maybe something that isn't appreciated well enough that you would like to amplify?
One of the things, maybe specifically for my role in the organization, is today, the average life expectancy of a CEO is 3 to 5 years. And so the fact that I've been in one place for 21, so I've obviously, multiple lives so far. But I think the thing that maybe is a bit of a myth is that you've got to move and you've got to change and you have to move on. And I think today, if you are really going to affect change, truly hardwire culture and quality and those things within an organization, it's not a quick fix. But the other piece is it gets back to, I am not the same. Some of the basics, yes, but I'm not the same leader today that I was 20 years ago. And I think the other myth is that you can't change and modify your style and work differently in an organization, that you have to move someplace else. So that's just a little bit of it. And I think the other myth is, that we can't affect change when you're in a small rural community, and that's not true either. I I've gone out and beat the pavement in Washington, and on a state level, and we can be heard
Yeah.
in healthcare. You just have to care enough to go carry the message.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's about um, managing your as a CEO who has now lived 4 CEO lifetimes, kind of managing your energy, and really when you have the opportunity to make the right kind of influence, to double down on that. But also, I would imagine there's some self-management in that, not trying to be all things to all people and saying, hey, we can't save the world, but we can do a lot of good in this community, and that's where I'm going to focus.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I've got one more for you. And this sometimes stumps people. So I'll encourage you, don't think too hard. I've had people answer pen and paper. I've had people say, talk to other people. I'm looking for a tool that you use in your work. It doesn't have to be a digital tool. It can be analog, but something that you use that is important to you in terms of getting the job done. It could be an app, but it doesn't have to be an app. Something that you rely on that is critical to you from a productivity standpoint, if you will.
Yeah, that's a harder that is a harder question, because I actually was, talking to my executive assistant, my kind of my right arm a little bit, and kidded her because I said, well, maybe you should join my podcast today, because her observation was, for me, she said that I use my Outlook differently than she's ever seen any executive use it.
Okay, tell me about that.
And I'm like, well, that's curious. But it's really how I populate an Outlook with something maybe on the top end of the day in terms of, tasks, or a reminder of, what really needs to happen, and using that kind of electronic method. Do I still have a, kind of a whiteboard in my office where I've written down some of those top of the mind things? I want them in my face, every day.
Yeah.
But I think using, really starting to embrace, we just converted to Office 365 over the last few months, but really embracing the technology that I have at my fingertips has been fun to learn, and you didn't exist when I started my career.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned both the whiteboard and the more micro sort of immediate view, because I think you really need both. You need those reminders on a daily basis of, what do I need to do today? I know that I have what I call my top 3, and it's the top 3 priorities every day. I use a to-do list app to manage all that, and they're in different colors, and I know, okay, by the end of the day, I have to get these 3 things done, and everything else is sort of discretionary. But then you have to have the larger view, because if all you focus on is the minutia, you're not going to get anything important done. So I think what I like in that is you have a little bit of both, but you've adapted to, all right, this is where my attention is going to be. I need to make sure those reminders are in front of me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing, again, just because of the nature of the work that I do, and and still, yes, there's still paper in my life, but the I guess I'll put in the plug for Staples, the ARC system. So it's got the pre-punched pages, but I still have a very small, handy one of those, because I work with medical staff.
Yeah.
And I go to sit down, and this doc needs my ear and wants this, and this, and this one, this. And so just for my medical staff, because I love them, whenever I go anywhere where they're going to be, that little binder goes with me.
Yep.
Because when they go, Ada, when I talked to you 3 weeks ago and we were talking about X, where is X today?
Yeah.
And I am going, yes, we did, and here's what I said, and here's where we are.
Yeah.
So I still truly bridge, but yet when I go to a meeting, I'll take my laptop and I take electronic notes. So
Yeah.
I'm a blend.
Well, what I like about that is different tools for different audiences, right? There are coworkers who, if I'm taking notes on a laptop when I'm talking to them, they might think I'm not paying attention to them because that's not their style. So I have to turn and face them and take written notes. Even if I think it's more efficient to type it into the computer, it sends a different message. Whereas there's others I can do that and it doesn't bother them. But it's knowing what you need for that audience I think that's a great message. In addition, it sounds like another recommendation. If you're going to be a CEO, have a great executive assistant. That sounds like another key to success.
I can tell you, I am beyond blessed with Shelley in terms of what she does and what she knows, and I learn from her every day.
How long have you worked together?
A year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I had
wow.
my previous. We've moved her into grant writing. She loved that field, and so she had been with me the whole time. But this young lady has come in with different background and experience, and very strategic thinker, and got a lot of tech background.
Yeah.
So great. I've been blessed with great team members, but different skill set. And I guess that's the other thing is I love looking what's like just in the DNA of the person and letting them do the job, but also letting their DNA come out.
Yeah. Yeah. And embracing and sort of leveraging the unique strengths they bring to the table. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Ada, I really appreciate it. You've got a great story. I very much appreciate you taking the time to share some of it with us, and congratulations on everything you've built over the past 20 plus years.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you to you and your agency and what you do, and Mike Fulton, the work that he has done with me over 30 years has been phenomenal. So thank you for that.
Well, Mike speaks very highly of you, and I know we appreciate the opportunity to be involved. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who took the opportunity to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.